As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. Well, at least in video game forms. Today we're taking a look back at 10 of the best gangster or gangster adjacent games in the last 5 years. There have been plenty of gangster games across time, but we're narrowing it down to more recent. Like I said, within the last 5 years, but we got 10 to talk about, so let's get started off with number 10 and talk about Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth from 2024. Here's the thing, is Infinite Wealth actually a gangster game? It's complicated. No, I mean, your main man Kasuga is a former Yakuza, sure, but there's very little actual gangster stuff in this game. It's really more of a weird modern day RPG adventure. That's not to say that there aren't some good gangster elements in there though. I mean, the opening, for example, this whole flashback to a gangland killing is the most La Cosa Nostra thing in the entire Yakuza / Like a Dragon series. And one of the many enemy factions you face off against in this Hawaiian adventure is a gang called the Barracudas, who are by far the most gangster-ish organization to appear in any Yakuza game. Their boss, Dwight, is played by the always great Danny Trejo, and he's an amazing adversary. And one of the rare times this series employed a celebrity voice actor, well, an American one at least. They do this all the time with Japanese actors, but here they nailed it. The Barracuda's entire secret underground compound that's also a mall for some reason is completely absurd, but these guys are some of the most violent and dangerous enemies seen in the series, which is novel, if nothing else. So yeah, good gangster stuff in here, but not really a gangster game.
Let's go, let's go. You're in it now. Got you now. Here we go.
Expect to see that a lot on this list because unfortunately the actual selection for real gangster games has been slim in the last few years. Still, there are some noteworthy things we still think Like a Dragon is worth highlighting, so let's move on to number 9. We're going to talk about Red Dead Redemption 2. The 5-year cutoff is close, but screw it. The game came out October 26th, 2018, so the game isn't quite 6 years old, so it counts. You know what? Can you tell that we're a little desperate for this list? Yes, the Western epic is another real borderline choice, but it's got a place on this list just for the fact that there is an entire chapter of the game where you deal with honest-to-God mobsters. After fleeing the bayou, you're forced to deal with the mob boss Angelo Bronte, who's got John's son under his protection. The entire Saint-Denis section of the game is a real culture shock, and one of our personal favorite sections, just because of how completely different it is from the rest of the game. Instead of like pastoral wilderness and outlaw shenanigans, this part of the game has you embroiled in real criminal conspiracies. You're constantly in over your head, you're not sure what's going on or who to trust, and it's clear from the moment you come into the city that you and the gang are kind of out of your element. It turns this Western into something else entirely for a few hours, and it's great. I mean, hell, for most people, just being in a city in a game like this feels wrong, and Rockstar does a good job really leaning into the fish out of water aspect of the story up to this point. And technically, I can argue that this is just a gangster game completely because you are a member of a gang, Dutch's gang. But I know, nobody really thinks of like train robbery when they think of gangsters usually, aside from that one San Andreas mission. Either way, normally we wouldn't say that the game counts for something like this, but at least it's got a pretty major character who is, by all definitions, a capital G gangster. Next, over at number 8, we have the Hong Kong Massacre, a game from 2019. This list is gonna go in some odd directions, so just try and follow us here. In this Hotline Miami inspired action game, you play as a former cop going on a revenge rampage against the ruling gang. It's literally the game that inspired the overhead action scene in John Wick 4, and this game is almost as awesome as that. It's a John Woo movie seen from above, or a simplified version of Max Payne. You can slow down time, shoot, dodge, all the stuff you'd expect, and it's absolutely chaotic and crazy when things really go all out. This is a short game that doesn't have the depth or challenge of something like Hotline Miami, but as a fun little diversion, it's a pretty great gangster blaster. Next, over at number 7, we have the 2021 game Adios. Now, this is another oddball pick, but this is a good narrative adventure game. In it, you play as a pig farmer who assists the mafia by quote-unquote removing bodies, and you end up wanting out. The only problem is that you're dealing with the real hardcore, like, no one leaves the organization alive type of mobsters. So they send a hitman over to your house. The entire game takes place over your last day on Earth and is more of a rumination on death than, some kind of exciting crime adventure, but it's such an interesting twist on the usual mafia tropes that it deserves a spot on this list. There is no action or really any game mechanics at all. You just play through these scenes and talk to your hitman until the game ends. And while you do get a few choices to make, the actual outcome is never in question. You're gonna get killed, you're gonna get whacked. It's only about 90 minutes long, but the writing is solid and the ideas are interesting. It's a game that was stuck in our head ever since we played it, and while we do think it could have explored some of the ideas better or longer, it's still a unique experience that you might not regret playing.
Well, most people have, I don't know, chickens and cows. You got goats.
Is that judgment I hear?
No judgment, no. Just wondering, why goats?
Goat milk.
There can't be much profit in that.
There's enough. Besides, I had you.
Have. You still have.
As I've said, I'm no longer interested in that particular revenue stream.
Now, next over at number 6, we have Empire of Sin. This 2020 tactical strategy game is about as gangster as a game as it gets. In it, you pick from a variety of real and fictional Prohibition-era gangsters, and from there, you build up your territory, you fight rival gangs, you buy up businesses to use as fronts for all your illegal activities, you smuggle booze across the border. It's got all that stuff. If you're into Boardwalk Empire, this is kind of like a mini Boardwalk Empire simulator. You battle it out for control of territory in these kind of XCOM-like missions, and while this game is overall not nearly as good as the recent XCOM games, it's still a pretty entertaining strategy game, even if it doesn't have too much depth. It's unfortunately kind of buggy, and it doesn't really have too much support these days from the developers, but even with all that said, it's not the worst game, and it does have some cool ideas. I was looking forward to this one way before it was officially released, and it didn't quite live up to expectations, but, it's somewhere in between. Because if you can get this one cheap, then it's a pretty fun little game. We're always there for a game with a mafia theme, even the middling ones. Empire of Sin has a lot of problems, but overall, can't help but be positive about it. It's just such a good idea for a game. Next, over at number 5, we have 2018's Guns, Gore, and Cannoli 2. This is another borderline entry on this list, but come on, I mean, with a title like that, it's got to get a look in here. This side-scrolling shoot-'em-up is like a gangster-themed Metal Slug, and it's just as crazy as that sounds. This sequel takes the over-the-top action of the first game and actually transplants it into World War II. Now, you're gangsters fighting Nazis, and it's even more ridiculous than before. This game is just a joy to play, especially with a friend. And while it's not the best looking game, the visuals do work well with all the mayhem happening on screen. This is a fun and somewhat overlooked game that deserves some extra attention. It's not the best 2D shooter of the generation or anything like that, but it's still a fun time.
I hope you have turtle insurance.
Now, over at number 4, we have the Grand Theft Auto Trilogy Definitive Edition. Alright, this 2022 Definitive Edition remaster thing of the GTA 3 trilogy is obviously not great. We've gone into great lengths many times in the past about how this release just did not get the love from Rockstar it needed. It was really undercooked and messy. Now in 2024, at least, many of the most infamous issues have been fixed. You know, the games are perfectly playable for the most part. Sure, they're missing a lot of music, features, and effects of the original games, but in a pinch, they're still the same classic games. Technically, I would tell you to just go play the original versions, but considering we're talking about games from the last 5 years, we're cheating a little bit. The important thing to take away here is that GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas are some of the most groundbreaking open world games ever and still hold up well. Sure, the new Definitive Edition graphics are pretty cartoonish and sometimes ugly with the choices, but they basically hold up okay if you're willing to look past them or if you've never even seen the original games. Now, if there's one game in the trilogy that really holds up as a gangster game, it's Vice City. You know, Tommy Vercetti is an agent of the Italian mob, and your main goal through most of the game is to literally become the new kingpin of Vice City by buying up properties and eliminating enemy gangs. It's the closest thing to a gangster simulation you're going to get in these games. Outside of, you know, the gang wars from San Andreas or the PSP games, I digress. The first section of San Andreas, you play as a very different kind of gangster, but it's all good stuff and is the most grounded part of the game by far. The further you get from Los Santos, the wackier San Andreas gets, but the game always has that gangster edge to it that keeps things interesting. However you experience these games, from gangster antics to actually dealing with the mob, specifically a lot in 3 and Vice City, these games are just worth experiencing one way or the other. That's long story short. Now, next at number 3, we have City of Gangsters from 2021. You know, most gangster games are all about getting into shootouts and violence, but this one takes a more strategic approach to the whole material. This turn-based strategy game is set during Prohibition-era Chicago and is more about managing supply chains than getting into violent gun battles. I'm serious about that. Your main goal here is establishing and creating efficient supply chains. It's closer to something like a Railroad Tycoon than other high-level strategic simulators, which might sound kind of boring, but for the right person, there's actually a lot to like here. For a game with kind of basic visuals too, just the theming is still really strong here. And while the faraway angle might make things seem pretty dry, there are some Crusaders Kings-like NPCs who will hold grudges or become your best friend, depending on what you do and how you treat them. So sure, there's some tedium to all the deliveries you have to micromanage at first, but things do get more interesting, and the many DLCs this game has gotten over the years really flesh out the gameplay systems significantly. We never said that being a gangster was all fun and murder. Sometimes there's paperwork and supply management too. Now at number 2, we have Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name. Yes, another Yakuza game. You can tell that we're a little desperate to fill this, like I said, but this 2023 action game brings back Kiryu as the main character to help flesh out the story of like Yakuza 7 and everything. I mean, flesh out is a stretch. Basically, there's another new Yakuza bad guy that he needs to beat up, only this time he's got spy gadgets. He's a super spy with the world's worst cover though, so everyone immediately knows it's him. The glasses aren't fooling anyone, dude. It all plays out in a pretty by-the-numbers Yakuza plot. There's an over-the-top secret casino and lots of random schemers plotting to take it over. It's your usual stuff. But it's actually the most gangster-focused game in the series that's come out, at least in the last couple of years. The Judgment games all have Yakuza in them, but they're secondary to the plot at best. And Yakuza 7 is another game pretty light on the drama of like the clans and everything, while this game dives right into the deep end of the whole thing. It doesn't really reveal anything we didn't already know from Yakuza 7, but just as a fun little side game to give Kiryu the spotlight again and beat up some bad guys and some gangsters, this is another solid entry in the series. Now down to number 1, we have Mafia Definitive Edition from 2020. Of course this is number one. I mean, what else could it be? You knew we would get here. The original Mafia was a cult classic for a reason on PC, and in our opinion at least, this definitive edition really improves on it. I mean, it's like a remake. It's a beautiful game, full of amazing period-appropriate detail and some solid storytelling. The game may look like it's open world, but it's really not. The map is really just for driving to and from missions. But after playing multiple 100+ hour games in a row this year, we are happy to go back to a game that just trims the fat a little bit. It's quality over quantity. This game is just all about the story. It's Grand Theft Auto if all you did were missions, and in this case, it really works. The actual shooting mechanics aren't amazing, but they're functional and suit the nature of the game, especially if you're playing it on classic difficulty, which makes the game just as deadly as the original one. The story is kind of your standard rags to riches to rags again mafia story, but how it's told is what elevates it above your usual genre fare. All the performances in the definitive edition are excellent, and the new script adds a lot of nuance to the story where there originally wasn't too much there. This game is one of the best examples of a remake really taking what works about a game and improving things by making some intelligent changes and choices. It may be the definitive gangster game, and one that we just appreciate more as time goes on. It's still not perfect, like we said, the shooting isn't the most satisfying, but it is a great game overall and easily one of our favorite gangster games from the past 5 years. But those are 10 games. Like I said, there is some wiggle room for how gangstery they are, so we want to hear what you guys think in the comments, and if you have some other examples, we'd love to hear it. Maybe next time we'll go further back. You know, 5 years there's only so much, so let's try 10 years next time and see what else we come up with. There's a lot of games to talk about, so hit us in the comments if you got anything at all, but if you like talking games with us every day, clicking the like button's all you gotta do. It really helps us. And if you're new, consider subscribing, maybe hitting that notification bell, because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.